Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we've got some jaw-dropping AITA stories that will have you questioning what's acceptable in relationships, family, and the workplace. From co-workers clashing over parenting duties to a brother crossing a line that should never be crossed. But stick around, because the last story really takes the cake. Imagine being on a long flight and someone demands your seat because they're pregnant. What would you do? Trust me, this one's not as simple as it sounds. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and turn on notifications so you never miss any future AITA drama. Let's get started. Husband screamed in my face that he doesn't love me in front of our toddler. Imagine your partner shattering your world by screaming that they don't love you in front of your child. Let's dive in. I'm sitting in a store parking lot trying to process what just happened. A little backstory. My husband and I have twins, 3 years old, and both work. Stressful life, a lot going on. Barely see each other. Today, he was watching some goddamn election bullshit on his phone. He's been obsessed with listening to Ben Shapiro and fighting with people on Facebook over politics. And the twins were both crying for my attention. They fight over me constantly. One of them was in a full-blown tantrum. My husband is just sitting there on his phone, not caring about the world. I keep yelling to him, asking if he will help. He responds saying how one of our daughters doesn't want him, so it won't matter if he tries to help. I then went into the bedroom with one of my daughters and shut the door. I start pulling the sheets off the bed because they need to be washed. He's supposed to be starting dinner, but all I can hear is his damn phone and whatever he's got playing on it. I come out to load the washer and the girls are both still screaming for me, and I finally yell louder and say, "Help me! What are you doing?" He then drops his phone and screams, "What do you want me to do?" Starts telling me to shut up, that all I do is complain, etc. I get in his face and say, "What did I tell you about telling me to shut up? I don't want to be with you anymore if you keep speaking to me that way." He replies saying, "Great, because I don't love you anymore. You're a bitch who is miserable all day long." I can't even express how badly those words hurt, so I started crying. Our 3-year-old was standing right there, BTW. I immediately grabbed the car keys and left. I'm thinking of staying at my friend's house tonight. This is a continuous pattern. The way he speaks to me is unreal, and I cannot tolerate it anymore. I've told him this so many times. He says I bring out the worst in him. Every single thing is my fault. I'm aware we need counselling, like yesterday, hoping for any sort of advice, input, etc. IDK, I'm just at my wit's end. It's hard to believe how someone could say such hurtful things in front of their toddler. But if you thought that was bad, wait until you hear the next story, where a grieving mother kicks out her own brother after a shocking betrayal. AITAH for kicking my brother and his new wife out of my house after they tried to redecorate my dead daughter's room while I was at work. What would you do if someone tried to redecorate a room filled with memories of your lost child? This one is heartbreaking. Let us know in the comments. So this is still pretty fresh, and I'm absolutely fuming. For context, I, 38F, lost my daughter 2 years ago in a car accident. She was only 14, and ever since that day, I've kept her room exactly as she left it. I don't go in there often, but just knowing that it's there, untouched, brings me comfort. It's like having a piece of her still with me. Her posters, her art supplies, her clothes, all of it is still there. I can't bring myself to change it. Now, fast forward to a few months ago, my brother, 34M, and his new wife, 29F, had some financial issues after blowing a ton of money on a ridiculous, extravagant wedding. They asked if they could stay with me while they saved up for a place. Even though I wasn't thrilled about it, I agreed because, well, family, right? At first, things were fine, until recently. I noticed my sister-in-law making comments about how I shouldn't keep a shrine and how it's time to move on. I ignored her because, frankly, it's none of her damn business how I grieve my child. My brother mostly stayed quiet, but I could tell she was getting into his ear. Anyway, I came home from work last week to a literal nightmare. I walked into my daughter's room, and I kid you not, they had taken down all her posters, boxed up her stuff, and had started repainting the walls, a hideous beige. They had moved in a bunch of generic furniture, hung up new curtains, and were apparently turning it into a guest room. I lost it. Screaming, crying, the whole thing. I asked them what the hell they were thinking, and their response. My sister-in-law had the nerve to tell me they did it as a favour to help me move on, because it was unhealthy for me to keep the room as it was. I was shaking with rage. I told them to pack their stuff and get the hell out of my house immediately. My brother tried to calm me down, saying they meant well and were only trying to help me let go. He even tried to make me feel guilty by saying they had nowhere else to go right now, as if that would make me suddenly forgive them for destroying the last piece of my daughter I had left. I told them I didn't care, and that they had crossed an unforgivable line. Now, my whole family is divided. My parents think I overreacted and say I'm being heartless for kicking them out. They keep saying they were just trying to help, they didn't mean any harm, and that I'm being too harsh because people grieve differently. They're even suggesting I apologise and let them move back in. My brother is still texting me, asking me to reconsider, saying they're in a tough spot, but all I see when I look at him is betrayal. So, AITA for kicking them out and refusing to even consider letting them back in after what they did. Family boundaries are essential, especially in a situation like this. Her brother and sister-in-law definitely crossed a line. It wasn't their place to dictate when she should move on or how long she should grieve. Only she can make that call. It was incredibly insensitive to take matters into their own hands and redecorate the room without her permission. Sometimes, respecting someone's emotional space is more important than trying to help. Speaking of boundaries, the next story involves a husband taking a drastic step after his wife asked for a divorce. In our next story, a husband wants to reverse his vasectomy after his wife asks for a divorce. Is he right or wrong? AITAH for reversing my vasectomy after my wife asked for divorce? My 40M wife, 40F, seems to want a divorce. She started hinting on divorce months ago, sending me passive-aggressive articles and videos. Our latest fight was about an article she sent me about a woman leaving her husband for dishes. I didn't read it. She started bugging me about reading it, and I told her that I'm not reading it. I told her that if she is going to divorce me because I left dishes in the sink, then do it already, because I am going to leave dishes in the sink sometimes. It's not the end of the world, and if we were so overpowered by the dishes, I would just hire someone to do the dishes for me. She then asked for divorce, and I just ignored her. She then told me to move out, and I said I will. I will move out by the end of the month, like she wanted. I am also planning to reverse my vasectomy. She was very offended by it. I just told her that I got a vasectomy for her because she asked me to, and since we are divorcing, I don't have reason to continue it. But she didn't accept that reason. She accused me of having another woman in mind. I don't have anyone to have more kids with, and no plan to have more kids for now, but I should continue being sterile, because my wife wants me to, the same wife who wants to divorce me because of dishes. It's ridiculous. I don't understand it. I got a vasectomy because she asked. When she asked, she even told me that vasectomy is reversible if I change my mind. Now I am getting served a shit sandwich of divorce, and I am not even allowed to reverse a vasectomy. It's just ridiculous. Talk about taking control of your own choices. But let's be honest, this doesn't seem like it's just about the vasectomy or the dishes. It feels like there are deeper issues in this marriage that OP is either ignoring or just doesn't want to deal with. His wife isn't leaving him over something as simple as dishes. She's probably tired of not being listened to or having her concerns brushed aside. Reversing the vasectomy without telling her seems like a move meant to hurt her rather than a personal decision. Sure, she doesn't control what he does with his body, but it's clear their marriage has been on rocky ground for a while and he's likely missed all the signs. Speaking of family dynamics, the next story dives into another level of boundary crossing, where someone lies about infertility just to stop their sister's relentless requests. This next story just shows how hard it is to simply say no to a family member, especially when they are persistent and refuse to respect your boundaries. How far would you go to stop a family member from constantly pressuring you? The next story is titled AITA for telling my sister I was infertile just to get her to stop asking me to be her surrogate. 3 years ago, my sister, Anna, she was 29 at the time, now 32, had been struggling with infertility for years. I was 26 then and married, but my husband and I wanted to wait before having kids so we could focus on our careers and establish ourselves. Anna kept asking me to be her surrogate, and no matter how many times I politely declined, she just wouldn't take no for an answer. I explained that I wasn't ready for children myself, that I wasn't comfortable with being pregnant for someone else, and that I didn't think I could handle the emotional and physical stress that comes with surrogacy. But Anna would always counter my reasons, saying that I was her only hope, and would often guilt-trip me about how much she wanted a baby and how great of an aunt I'd be. The pressure got to be too much. During a family gathering, she brought it up again, in front of everyone, which made me feel trapped and humiliated. I was tired of my boundaries being ignored, so I told her, "I can't be your surrogate, Anna, because I'm infertile myself." That wasn't true, as far as I knew. I just wanted her to stop asking. Anna looked shocked and was devastated. After that, she wouldn't talk to me, and eventually she and her husband got divorced because they couldn't agree on how to move forward with her infertility. Now, 3 years later, I am 29 and currently pregnant with my first child. When I told Anna about the pregnancy, she completely freaked out. She's been accusing me of betraying her, calling me a liar, and even saying I ruined her marriage. She's been acting irrational and angry towards me ever since, and it's causing a lot of tension within the family. I feel guilty about lying, and I never imagined things would go this far. I only wanted her to respect my boundaries, but now it seems like I may have seriously hurt her life. AITA for telling my sister I was infertile, just to get her to stop asking me to be her surrogate. It's tough when family doesn't respect boundaries, and you can understand both sides here. Anna desperately wanted a child, and it's clear that she saw her sister as the perfect person to help make that happen. But at the same time, it was unfair for Anna to keep pushing after her sister had already expressed why being a surrogate wasn't something she could do. It's a huge commitment, emotionally and physically, and Anna had other options she could explore, like finding another willing family member or going through the legal process to find someone who actually wants to be a surrogate. On the other hand, lying about something as deeply personal as infertility crossed a line. It probably seemed like the only way out at the time, but that lie may have permanently damaged their relationship. Honesty is crucial in any relationship, especially between family members, and this situation shows how deception can make things even worse. On that note, the next story tackles another tricky issue, this time in the workplace, where one co-worker is accused of being lazy for not having kids. Is it wrong to refuse to cover a co-worker's shifts after they called you lazy for not having children? Let's dive in. The poster is asking, AITA for refusing to cover my co-worker's shifts after she called me lazy for not having kids. I, 28F, work full-time in retail, and as anyone who's worked retail knows, it can be pretty exhausting. I've got a busy life outside of work, trying to balance my hobbies, taking care of my apartment, seeing friends, and just taking care of myself. You know, normal adult stuff. I don't have kids, but that doesn't mean I'm lounging around with endless free time. One of my co-workers, Sarah, 32F, has 2 young kids. She's always asking people to cover her shifts, which I understand because being a mum is hard and things come up. Over the past year, I've covered for her quite a few times when she had to leave early or couldn't make it in because of some kid emergency. I did it out of kindness because I get that life can be unpredictable and I wanted to help her out. But I've started to notice that I'm one of the only ones she asks to help cover her shifts. It's like she expects me to do it just because I don't have the same responsibilities as her. Last week, she asked me again to cover for her because her kid had a school event. Normally, I'd try to help, but I already had plans to spend the day with my sister, who I hadn't seen in a while. I told Sarah I couldn't this time, and she just sighed and said, "Must be nice to have all that free time. You don't have kids, so it's not like you're busy with anything important." I was pretty taken aback. I told her, just because I don't have kids doesn't mean I don't have a life. My time is important too. She kind of rolled her eyes and walked away, but I could tell she wasn't happy with me. Now, she's been telling our other co-workers that I'm selfish and don't understand how hard it is to be a mum. A couple of them have started acting a bit distant toward me, and I overheard one of them saying something like, "She has it easy, no wonder she doesn't get it." I didn't realise not having kids made me less deserving of respect at work. What really gets me is that I've always tried to help when I could. But just because I don't have kids doesn't mean my life is suddenly stress-free or that I can drop everything at a moment's notice. I feel like Sarah doesn't respect my time at all, and that really bothers me. I ended up mentioning it to my manager, hoping for a little understanding, but they just said it's a personal conflict and didn't want to get involved. So now I'm stuck feeling like the bad guy because I said no for once. I honestly don't think it's fair to expect me to cover her shifts all the time just because I don't have children. I have responsibilities too, and I deserve to have a life outside of work. But some of my co-workers seem to think I should be helping out more because Sarah's a mum and I'm not. Am I being selfish here? AITA for finally standing my ground and refusing to cover her shifts after she basically called me lazy? It's easy to sympathise with parents juggling work and kids. Being a parent is no small task. But at the end of the day, having kids is a choice, and it shouldn't come at the expense of those who've chosen a different path. There's an unwritten rule in many workplaces that single women, or those without kids, are expected to work longer hours, take on later shifts, or cover for parents who can't make it. That expectation is unfair. Just because someone doesn't have children doesn't mean they should have to sacrifice their work-life balance to compensate for others. What's even more disappointing is the management's refusal to step in. It sounds like the poster is being harassed to some degree by co-workers who believe it's her responsibility to pick up the slack. Workplaces should be spaces of equal responsibility and respect, not places where people are guilted into taking on more than their fair share. Workplace drama can get intense, but this one takes the cake. And speaking of tough choices, next up is a story of a passenger who refused to give up their window seat on a long flight to a pregnant woman. Would you have done the same? The passenger will like to know. AITAH for refusing to give up my window seat to a pregnant woman on a long flight. I, 27M, recently took a long-haul flight, about 12 hours, for a business trip. I'm quite tall, 6'4" and always try to book a window seat so I can lean against the wall to sleep without bothering anyone. I booked my seat months in advance. When I boarded the plane and reached my seat, there was a woman, maybe early 30s, sitting in it. I politely told her that the seat she was in was assigned to me. She looked up and said she was pregnant and needed the window seat to rest. She asked if I could take her assigned seat instead, which was a middle seat several rows back. I sympathised with her situation, but explained that I had specifically booked the window seat for comfort due to my height and the long flight duration. I suggested that we ask a flight attendant for assistance. The flight attendant tried to find another window seat for either of us, but the flight was fully booked. The woman started getting upset, saying that as a pregnant woman, she should have priority and that I was being inconsiderate. Some passengers nearby began to glare at me. Feeling pressured, but still wanting my seat, I stood my ground and politely insisted she move to her assigned seat. She huffed but eventually moved, though she muttered under her breath about how selfish I was. Throughout the flight, I could feel tension and notice some passengers giving me dirty looks. After the flight, a colleague who was also on the plane said I should have just given up the seat to avoid conflict and be considerate. So, AITA for refusing to give up my window seat to a pregnant woman on a long flight. There's a lot wrong with this situation. First, being pregnant doesn't give someone the automatic right to take someone else's seat. When you pay for a flight these days, you're expected to pay extra if you want to select your preferred seat. And it seems like the pregnant passenger either didn't pay for that option or simply assumed someone would accommodate her request. It's not fair to expect a stranger who went out of their way to secure the seat they wanted to give it up just because of her circumstances. What's even more frustrating is how the other passengers judged the OP. Any of them could have offered their window seat if they felt so strongly, but none did because, just like the OP, they wanted the convenience of their chosen seat. It's much easier to judge someone from the sidelines when you're not the one being put in that position. The OP stood his ground, and while it might not have been the popular decision, it wasn't wrong. And there you have it, some wild stories today. From family overstepping in unimaginable ways to co-workers thinking they're entitled to your time, these situations really show how boundaries can get blurred. But that last one, giving up your seat to a pregnant woman, what would you have done? It's one of those dilemmas where, no matter what choice you make, someone's going to judge you. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you can stay tuned for even more stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.